Welcome to the BreachLock integrated platform. Unify your security testing with one seamless platform that consolidates all your product solutions and test findings. Leverage a common data model, validate attack paths, and map your entire attack surface all in one place. BreachLock breaks down silos and connects solutions to deliver a unified view of your security landscape for comprehensive asset visibility. By leveraging the power of integration, BreachLock consolidates penetration testing as a service, or PTaaS, attack surface management, continuous pen testing and automated scanning, as well as red teaming capabilities in one data model for endless clarity and reporting. Upon logging into the BreachLock integrated platform, the user will automatically land on the dashboard overview. Integrated within this platform is PTaaS. By clicking on the drop-down menu, the user will see two features, one for pen tests and the other for vulnerabilities. This demo will specifically focus on PTaaS and the vulnerabilities discovered through manual pen testing. So let's get started by clicking on the vulnerabilities feature. Immediately, the user will see a rolled up view of all vulnerabilities discovered through the manual pen testing process. Vulnerabilities discovered are itemized and include the name of the vulnerability, the pen test the vulnerability is associated with, its risk severity, assets impacted by that vulnerability, when the vulnerability was identified, and lastly, the ability to generate a rescan. The user can search by vulnerability by name in the search bar above, by risk, or by mitigation status. Let's go through each of these features in detail. Again, the user can use the search bar if they'd like to search for a specific vulnerability. The user can also filter by severity. By clicking All Risks, the drop-down menu will appear, and the user will see the option to filter by critical, high, medium, low, or informational risk. Let's use the filter and select for high vulnerabilities, since this is a vulnerability that would require immediate attention. As you can see, there are 3 high severity vulnerabilities that have been identified. Or the user can select by medium, for example, where we see 7 vulnerabilities that have been classified as medium or are potentially less exploitable and remain unpatched. These vulnerabilities should still be reviewed for mitigation once the security team has assessed both critical and high vulnerabilities. And it would be the same for low vulnerabilities. As you can see here, there are 4, or informational vulnerabilities. As you will see, there are 15. Now let's return to All Risks. Adjacent to the All Risks tab is another drop-down menu in which the user can filter between unpatched, those vulnerabilities that have not been patched, updated, or mitigated yet. In this case, there are 31 unpatched vulnerabilities ranging in severity, or by patched. In this case, there are no vulnerabilities that have been patched yet. So let's begin by digging deeper into the vulnerabilities identified through pen testing. Again, we will filter for high severity and unpatched, as these vulnerabilities would be very important to address right away. Here you will see 3 high severity vulnerabilities that remain unpatched. If the user clicks on the vulnerability itself, and we will click on one parameter, tampering possible, a pop-up will appear where the user will find all the vulnerability details, starting with the risk severity, which is high, the name of the vulnerability, the number of assets impacted. In this case, 1 asset was impacted by this vulnerability, the CVSS score, which is 7.5, which is very high and in need of immediate attention, and the CVSS vector, for which BreachLock supports both CVSS 3 and 4. Next, you will see the vulnerability description. This includes a description of the vulnerability itself, where it may have originated, and the potential impact if no action is taken. So we are not just providing a line item, rather it is part of a rolled-up view for better consumption of how many assets are affected with those specific vulnerabilities. Adjacent to the description is the recommendation. This is an expert recommendation for remediation of the vulnerability. Below this are vulnerability standards and compliance standards. Vulnerability standards refer to standards specific to an industry and target asset type. For example, OWASP Top 10 Broken Access Control. Other vulnerability standards might include OWASP ASVS Level 2, NIST Cybersecurity Framework, and other vulnerability standards, which would be visible in this section. The compliance standards are if the vulnerability discovered maps to any compliance framework requirements, then the compliance framework name would be visible here. Compliance standards might include, for example, SOC 2, ISO, PCI DSS version 4.0, etc. Next, the user will see references and a domain. References refer to more information about the findings and how to correct it. BreachLock does provide a description and recommendation, but if the user would like to read or know more about the vulnerability, they can use the reference link to study more. Below are assets impacted. By clicking on the drop-down menu to the right for each asset, you will find the vulnerability history on the impacted asset. This includes any updated findings, URLs that may be vulnerable, a description of the vulnerability, and most importantly, a proof of concept, or a POC, which is concrete evidence of the vulnerability, demonstrating that it is not a false positive, but a true positive and an actual risk to the organization. Lastly, you will see off to the right any comments left for the team about this vulnerability that needs to be reviewed or answered. In this case, someone has asked about more information regarding the patch vulnerability. Users can simply reply by adding a comment at the bottom or to add any comments the user might have as well. Now let's go back to the main vulnerability dashboard. Off to the far right of each vulnerability, the user will see under Action a rescan box to trigger an automated rescan. Once the user has selected Automated Rescan, a green box will appear in the upper right corner stating Automated Rescan for requests sent successfully. By clicking on this, the user will trigger the scan on all impacted assets and validation checks are executed for that vulnerability only. As you can see, the box is now in gray, meaning the automated rescan was or has been initiated. Rescans are often initiated to ensure that the vulnerability has been mitigated effectively and the controls put in place are working. And if this is the case, the vulnerability will be moved to patched vulnerabilities. If the vulnerability is not properly mitigated, that means it still remains in unpatched and the asset will be labeled rediscovered, which means the vulnerability is rediscovered on these assets. The proof of concept or evidence related against the asset will be updated as well. By consolidating pen testing vulnerabilities and test findings in one integrated platform, organizations eliminate the inefficiencies of switching between multiple tools and systems, centralizing automated workflows across all solutions, and accelerating the remediation and reporting process. With findings all in one place, the BreachLock integrated platform unifies analytics and shares insights across the DevSecOps teams, enabling faster decision-making based on real-time threats and their potential impact. With high-fidelity data, users can better understand vulnerable assets and why they may be business critical. This concludes the vulnerabilities feature associated with the manual pen testing process for PTaaS in the BreachLock integrated platform. Thank you.